Welcome, everybody, to the CEDMO International Conference. Dilemmas in European Democracy: is the community heading towards political nightfall and technological anomy? So some very scary-sounding concepts there, but hopefully by the end of the day we're going to find something of a way through them. My name is Jastinder Khera. I'm going to be the moderator for this first part of the day and also for the final panel in the afternoon. I'm from Agence France Presse, AFP, from the fact-checking department, the Europe team. I'm one of the editors there. AFP, you'll know, is a big international news agency, but it's also started a fact-checking department in 2017, and since then it's grown to publish fact-checks in more than 20 languages. So we're very, very proud of that work that we do. And today, for the first part of today, we're going to be hearing from a wide range of speakers just to set the scene for what we're going to be talking about. First of all, Václav Moravec, who many of you here in the Czech Republic will know, is a very prominent Czech journalist and broadcaster and also a lead coordinator of CEDMO. And then a short message from Petr, Pavel, the Czech president. That'll be a video message. He's not joining us in person. Milena Králíčková, the rector of Charles University, as well as being a very venerable and prestigious academic institution, it leads the CEDMO consortium, so we're very happy to be hearing from her. The Vice President of the European Commission for Values and Transparency, Věra Jourová, has also taken the time to be with us in person this morning, so thank you, Madam Commissioner. After that, we will have a video message again from Luciano Floridi from the Oxford Internet Institute. Unfortunately, he also couldn't be here in person, but he is going to be sending us a video message, and he's the Professor of Philosophy and Ethics at the Institute at the University of Oxford in the UK. And he's going to be talking about some of the attempts in the US, the UK, and the EU to address some of these questions from an ethical and regulatory perspective. Then we'll have Paolo Cesarini from the European University Institute, an expert in media policies, EU competition law and the digital single market, and also the program director of EDMO, the European Digital Media Observatory, slightly different from CEDMO. Then Robert Ivanschitz from Microsoft, the Associate General Counsel at Corporate External Legal Affairs for Central Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and is going to be talking about the role of AI in upholding democracy, not just a problem, but in upholding it, and also sharing some examples from Microsoft's point of view of how technology might be able to advance and protect democracy. And then to finish the first part of the day, there'll be Alan Záruba, who has many years' experience in design, publishing, and curation, including some very senior roles in design and creative direction at various Czech broadcasters, who is behind the very intriguing exhibition that you might have seen on the way in the first room, just off to the left-hand side, which is based on isotopes, the sort of forerunners of today's infographics that you might see in newspapers and TV channels. So looking at some of these questions from a more creative, artistic perspective, he's going to give a presentation about that, which should be really fascinating. I should also say, just given the current context, what's happening in the news agenda at the moment, any views which might be expressed by any participants are of course their own and shouldn't be taken as necessarily reflecting anybody else's. And just a small housekeeping note, in this room there's no food or drink allowed, so if you could please refrain from bringing any food or drink into the room. So, without further ado, I will hand over to Václav. Please, Václav.
Jastinder, many thanks for your introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Vice President of the European Commission, Věra Jourová, dear Madam Rector, Professor Milena Králíčková, dear friends. After a year, we are meeting again in Prague for the annual conference of the multidisciplinary consortium, call it the Central European Digital Media Observatory, which operate in Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia. In its second year of existence, CEDMO has confirmed that it's a respected project. Indeed, you can read in our latest annual report. My thanks go to all the members of the consortium, our fact-checkers from Agence France-Presse, AFP, and Demagog.cz not only continued to verify information regarding the war in Ukraine, but did a great job ahead of the Polish and Slovak elections. In our CEDMO special briefs, you can read which disinformation narratives were most widespread in Poland, Slovakia, before the elections. Thanks to the work of researchers from the Polish University, SVPS, and Charles University in Prague, we learned how satisfied voters in Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia are with the functioning of democracy, or which disinformation narratives are the most credible. Do you hear the paradox? The most incredible lies. Yes, this is also one of the characteristics of the digital media ecosystem. It's symbolic that it was in Prague that a play called it RUR, written by journalist and writer Karel Čapek, was staged more than 100 years ago. And it is in display that the word robot first appears. I am proud that we have great teams working on artificial intelligence at CEDMO, specifically from KINIT Bratislava and Czech Technical University in Prague. I would like to thank my colleagues from the Cyril and Methodius University in Trnava and Palacký University in Olomouc, who have been instrumental in the development of media and digital literacy activities in the Central European region. And, of course, I must not forget our Greek colleagues from the ATC, who are responsible for our website. If you read CEDMO's annual report, you will see how our consortium's activities have expanded over the past year. The creation of a representative longitudinal study of CEDMO trends in the Czech and Slovak republics would not have been possible without wise source funding. In its thanks to this for CEDMO here, real research and content independence. Now we are not only dependent on European funding as CEDMO. CEDMO Trends in the Czech Republic is created thanks to the National Recovery Plan of the Czech Republic. Slovak CEDMO Trends are funded thanks to the support of Google. And another research and educational activities are supported by Microsoft, which is a partner of this annual conference. I'm glad to welcome our colleague from the European Digital Media Observatory, Paolo Cesarini, in Prague today. Dear Paolo, we are proud to have CEDMO as part of the growing family of regional hubs in the EDMO network. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, CEDMO enters its third year of existence, which challenges the concern not only generative artificial intelligence, but also the upcoming European parliamentary elections. CEDMO looks forward to working with you and thank for you behind this today in Prague. I consider our annual conference open and wish you all many inspiring panel discussions today. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Václav. Some salutary reminders of the local context and the progress that CEDMO has been making over the past year. So now we're going to have that video message from the Czech president, Petr Pavel, I believe.
Zdravím všechny účastníky konference. Témata, o kterých se budete bavit, považuji za mimořádně důležitá a aktuální. Odolnost proti dezinformacím, aplikace umělé inteligence a dopad na naše životy a zvyšování odolnosti našich společností se zachováním demokratických hodnot. To všechno jsou věci mimořádně důležité pro naši budoucnost. Vidíme, jakou sílu mají dezinformace v případě útoků komand Hamasu na Izrael a nutné izraelské reakce. Je proto naším společným úkolem, abychom posilovali odolnost našich společností při zachování demokratických svobod. A o tom bude také vaše konference.
Now, Madam Commissioner Věra Jourová.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Václav, dear Madam Rector, dear colleagues, I'm really very happy to be here today to celebrate with you the second anniversary of CEDMO. These 2 years of operation of the European Digital Media Observatory and in particular of its regional hubs, such as our host CEDMO, have proven that you have become a central element in Europe's approach to counter disinformation. So it's a pleasure for me to congratulate today CEDMO for the important work done so far, despite its young age, such as the launch of the continuous fact-checking in the online media of Central Europe, your sociological research projects on disinformation, or the current conference. I am looking forward to see CEDMO to further develop its potential. We all see that in the last years our democratic processes have been under big threat, not only in Europe but everywhere around the world. The horrible war of aggression against Ukraine has exacerbated this trend, and disinformation surrounding the war became part of hybrid warfare. Today, the threat that disinformation has reached new levels with the huge wave of disinformation surrounding the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel and its aftermath. Such very harmful content is quickly gaining traction, gets viral, and it's amplified on social media. Online platforms became an unprecedented tool for spreading disinformation. And now it's happening what we really feared of in the past, that the online disinformation and hatred will spill over to real life. This is now the reality in the EU, but also in United States and many other places. Such content spreads across the EU in several languages and gets amplified, sometimes with no action being taken by platforms, or action that is way too slow in view of the rapidly unfolding conflict and the viral and rapid spread of such content. Online platforms have a responsibility to stop this from happening, and now we have a regulatory framework to make sure that they are doing their job according to EU rules. The Digital Services Act and Anti-Disinformation Code are Europe's unique structures and make us ready to respond. Along with the responsibility of platforms, let me also acknowledge the important work that EDMO community and others are doing to detect and expose disinformation. EDMO, its regional hubs, and its fact-checking network are key to build evidence on the presence of disinformation spreading online, as we can now attest with the wave of disinformation related to the war in Middle East. This evidence can be extremely useful to understand the amount of disinformation circulating on online platforms, as well as to assess the impact of the actions implemented by platforms to mitigate the risks related to disinformation. We have new data thanks to the code. So we can see that the platform with the largest ratio of disinformation posts was X, former Twitter, and also X has the largest relative engagement ratio. Moreover, the indicators found that platforms with a larger share of disinformation content have also a larger share of disinformation actors, and that the ratios of disinformation actors on Twitter and Facebook are the largest and of similar size. Let me say a few words about elections, because Václav also referred to this. I think next year we will have 62 important elections worldwide and several very important ones in the EU. Every election is important, but we have to get ready. Our priority in the Commission is to get ready for elections. It is important that they are free from any malign influence and that trust in democratic elections remains high. For instance, recently we have seen an example of the Slovak parliamentary elections held on the 30th of September. The members of the Code of Practice Task Force have noted a significant increase in disinformation narratives about election manipulation, foreign interference, as well as anti-migrant and anti-LGBT messages, often relayed by influential politicians and disinformation media channels. They also reported various cyber attacks against media and civil society organizations that sought to better inform voters. Generative AI was also used to manipulate the public opinion, but I will get to that in a moment. Signatories of the Code of Practice are notably expected to take targeted actions to prepare for elections in the following areas: demonetization, transparency of political advertising, prohibiting manipulative behavior, deploying user empowerment measures, strengthening fact-checking, and improving access to data for researchers. The framework of collaboration set up among signatories of the Code is also an important forum for exchange in this context, notably to ensure adequate preparedness ahead of the elections. I am also pleased to hear that EDMO has set up a dedicated task force on EU Parliament elections. It is good to hear that the task force aims to deliver a solid risk assessment ahead of the EU elections, as well as carrying out a continuous fact-checking activity focused on themes relevant for the electoral debate. We all know that the stakes are very high in the upcoming EU elections. Thus, I count on EDMO's contribution to protect these elections from disinformation and manipulation of the voters' opinion. The Digital Services Act also obliges the platforms to assess the risks related to elections and mitigate those risks. We will be very attentive to those elections aspects, and this is one of the issues I mentioned in my recent conversations with Meta and YouTube executives, and next week I will also discuss this with TikTok and X. It might be of some maybe interest for you that also we are now at the final stage of the negotiations of AI Act. It's hanging in the air whether we will put the AI technologies used in electoral campaigns as high-risk technologies. We have heavy discussions on that. Ladies and gentlemen, we need CEDMO and other regional hubs to help us understand and design policies that work in every member state on every level. Countering disinformation requires a whole-of-society approach, and that would not be possible without EDMO, without CEDMO and other regional hubs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Commissioner, for sparing the time and hopefully safe onward travels. So now, as advertised, Madam Rector, Milena Králíčková, please.
Dear Vice President of European Commission, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you at Charles University. Charles University, which is the largest and oldest and of course best university in Czech Republic, and also the leader in the higher education region, broader than just Czech Republic, is really happy to host CEDMO, the Central European Digital Media Observatory. And I'm really proud to be here again after a year to welcome you in our premises. I really find the CEDMO activities as something which is crucial for democracy and for our future. And I'm really happy to see that CEDMO actually tackles its activities as it is typical for Charles University cooperations and scientific projects, with a broad international cooperation and also with a broad cooperation with non-academic partners from industry and in other sectors. I truly believe that someday in the future we will not need to look at the medias or to watch digital media, but today we really need it. If we want to keep our democracy, if we want to keep our academic freedoms, if we want to keep our society in the shape as we have it, we really need projects like CEDMO. And I'm really happy to see that we have such strong partners to proceed in CEDMO aims. I'm convinced that the outcomes of today's meeting, as well as the outcomes of the project, will truly and deeply and directly contribute to what we really need to achieve. I would like to thank all the organizers that are behind the CEDMO project, behind the CEDMO activities and today's meeting. It's great to see here faces from academia, from non-academic sector, from politics, and this is what is CEDMO about. We should meet, we should be able to discuss things openly, and I'm so happy that academic Charles University premises can really host this project, this team, and these meetings. I wish you fruitful meetings, fruitful lectures, discussions, and I'm truly hoping to see you soon and to continue in this great work, which is extremely important for our society and for Europe in general. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Rector. And now we will have, I believe, that video message from Luciano Floridi of the Oxford Internet Institute.
Hello, and thank you so much for this very kind and interesting invitation. I'm terribly sorry not to be with you, but at least we could arrange this short video. And I'm also sorry that it's one way, so not very interactive. Hopefully next time. So my name is Luciano Floridi, and I'm recording this from Yale University. I've been asked to address a huge topic, which is the ethics of AI, and in particular, the ethics of large language models. I like to do that in a way that I hope is less obvious. You must have heard a lot about doing the right thing, asking companies to be more careful, trustworthy AI, legislation, norms, rules, principles. Indeed, we have been debating the ethics of AI for much, much longer than just the last few years. Early debates date to the 60s. So for some philosophers like me, this is old news. What I want to share with you is, as I said, a slightly different perspective about what ethics can do in general, and in particular for AI and the new AI, the large language models that we have seen in the last few years. We normally think about ethics in terms of a long list of what you should or should not do, or who you should be or should not be. In other words, a matter of choice and preferences. But actually, ethics does much more than that. So it starts by analyzing and understanding problems to begin with. Not every problem is obvious, and in our case, the ethics of AI and the ethics of generative AI, of large language models in particular, but also of any contemporary AI that produces contents, could be videos, pictures, music, understanding exactly what the problem is and where we should have an ethical intervention, an ethical approach is fundamental. I'm saying this because I have seen and heard a lot about sci-fi, science fiction problems. So understanding what the problems are, and in our case, for example, manipulation, bias, misuse of this technology by powerful people or by criminals, overuse by people who mean well but use it too much when it's unnecessary, or, for example, too expensive, or has a wrong impact on the environment, because we need to remember technology consumes energy, or even underuse when we could use this technology to do so much more and so much better, but we are afraid, or we don't know enough, or we don't have the right legislation. So step number one, the ethics of AI is, first of all, understanding what the real problems are. The second step is priority, not just analysis, but also which problems of the real problems, not the sci-fi, not the singularity, not the AI that in the style of Star Wars will come and dominate the world, or will replace us with its own intentions and mindful activities. I'm not talking about science fiction. I'm talking about the real technology that we are developing now and for any foreseeable future. Well, analyzing the problems is the first step, but the second one is to understand, of all the problems we have, which one have priority. Let me give you an example. AI is, of course, transforming the market, the job market. There is a problem and an opportunity. Is it a top priority and opportunity when it comes to pressing ethical issues? I think it's a top opportunity to do good. Is a pressing issue, but something even more pressing, I have already mentioned it, bias and manipulation. Think about political power, or the unfairness, or the digital divide between those who have all the advantages and those who suffer all the disadvantages. So there is priority, and ethics can help us there, not just analysis of the problem, but also which problems need to be solved first and which ones may have to wait because we have only that much time, only that much amount of resources. There's a third and a fourth step. The third step is, once you have a clear view of what the problems are and a clear priority of what problems need to be tackled first, then you need to find agreement, consensus around those analysis and list of priorities. We often think that is the task of politics, but ethics is just behind politics. How do we agree on which problems to tackle first and which are the real problems that need to be addressed? So consensus, agreement, that's also the ethics of AI. And finally, implementation, because all the goodwill in the world and all the best analysis and the best list of priorities and all the agreements are pointless if we don't do then what we had planned to do. So something has to change, something has to happen in order to implement the best ethical analysis that we have. So the 4 steps, understanding, prioritizing properly, building consensus, and then implementing the solutions. Now, if you have that list, how do we judge, and I'm coming to the end of this short video, how do we want to judge events around us in the last few months? Well, there are many, but 4 stand out. They made the news. And I start from the most unsuccessful, the UK summit. Think about it. Analysis of problems. A missed opportunity. There was a lot of talk about sci-fi. Priority. Now, everything in a single bag. Everything needs to be addressed at the same time, which is just another way of making sure that nothing happens. And then agreement. Well, there was a lot of agreement, but agreement about nothing. There were no promises, no commitments. So that agreement is not the kind of agreement I'm talking about. Consensus is built by putting together different views with some effort, not about deciding that you love Mum and the Red Cross. And finally, implementations. Nothing. No money, no legislation, no real commitments that we could check in a year time. So the UK summit, from an ethical perspective, was quite a missed opportunity. Move to the next, the G7 declaration, and there is a bit more of a consensus building, but nothing else. Again, not really as successful from an ethical perspective, a successful effort to tackle bias, as I remind you, of algorithms, misuse, underuse, overuse of algorithms, or even manipulation of our lives. And all that means privacy, data protection, and so on. The problems that we have seen in the last years grow. There were two more events that we need to list here. One, President Biden's order that has the advantage of being clear in terms of understanding the problem, the priorities as well. It does build consensus in a way that is a bit sort of imposing from the top, but at least it forces action. And if it is not entirely consensus building, but leaves many agencies free to tackle the relevant problems contextually, and it certainly has a clear sense of implementation. We will be able to tell in a year time what was achieved and what was not. But finally, the most successful of all approaches here from an ethical perspective, and I remind you, analysis, priority, consensus, implementation. And that is our own effort as Europeans. That is called the AI Act. Every time we look around, we should be proud of what Europe has done. Is weeks, many weeks perhaps, but not many months away from being implemented. And that comes with a clear understanding of the problems are, a clear priority of which problems need to be tackled first, and which perhaps later, but also which ones are sci-fi, they're not real. We should not be worried about zombies, and we should not be worried about singularity either. It comes with a consensus building that has taken years to reach, but is the way Europe makes steps forward, and it bites. It is a piece of legislation that will make a difference when people do not do what they are expected to do. And I remind you, the problems can be misuse, overuse, or underuse of this fantastic technology. All this with the good news at the end. This technology can make a big difference to society and to the environment, not just to business. And Europe has the opportunity to be at the forefront in terms of the right, proper, sustainable way, socially acceptable way of using AI for the 21st century. So thank you for the invitation. Have a great meeting. And I'm really glad I could share with you a little bit of time through this video. Have a good day.
So that was Luciano Floridi from the Oxford Internet Institute. And next we have from the European Digital Media Observatory, Paolo Cesarini, please.
Many thanks, Václav, and all your colleagues in CEDMO for this invitation. Many thanks to the Charles University for hosting us. I would like to start by acknowledging the good work, the very good work that CEDMO has been doing during the last 2 years, during its 2 years of existence, actually. And there are several facts that demonstrate the excellence of this work, including the activities around fact-checking, with the special briefs on election, as well as the fact-checking briefs, but also other very important initiatives. Looking at the sociological analysis and survey side, I think you have been capturing one element that was still missing across the network by looking what the trends in our societies are showing us when it comes to perception around the work that we are doing around this information. And also applying the research to AI and in a practical way to find out tools that actually help the work of analysis, detection, analysis, and exposure of this information. I remind the Fact Check Finder and the factual claim extraction tools, which are good examples of innovative approaches. Having said that, I would like also to flash out that the work of EDMO, and when I say EDMO, I include the EDMO EU, where I had the honor to be the director, but also all the network of hubs, not regional and national hubs that work as a family, as a joint up effort, are facing. And more generally, I would say the counter-disinformation community is facing today. These challenges are, in my view, four. The first one is more political in nature. And if you think about it, a continuous series of global crises shaped by orchestrated disinformation campaigns have really raised the level of social polarization and geopolitical instability, and distrust among citizens across the world and in Europe in particular. And it's useless to mention the examples from the COVID-19 pandemic to the 6th January assault to Capitol Hills, from the war in Ukraine to the most recent dramatic events in Gaza. All these events actually pose a very fundamental challenge to the counter-disinformation community under two respects. First of all, quantitative. There is a quantitative issue. So the volume of work that this community has to face simply increase together with the number of crises that we need to tackle. And the second one, it is more qualitative in nature. I think the more it becomes visible that disinformation is shaping our the political dimension of the public debate, and the more the work that is done by the community needs to be professional, independent, objective. And that is crucial in order also to prepare to ensure our credibility for the next challenges, in particular the future elections. Thank you. For the future elections, including the parliamentary elections next year. The second challenge is technological. We have just heard Floridi talking about generative AI, and I think that these challenges needs to be taken seriously. The risk is from the deep fakes, we are moving towards cheap deep fakes. Therefore, with a scale and the phenomenon of fabricated and misleading contents which we have not known before. And AI in order to contrast this evolution, I think AI needs to be harnessed for the good, for the better, to provide the tools that enable actions to counter and to identify and counter fabricated synthetic content. And again, I mentioned two examples coming from CEDMO, and I will repeat it today. The type of applied research on AI, the fact that you can have tools that identify what is needed for fact check and what are the narratives, how do you extract the narratives from the ocean of information that is out there on the internet, are very useful tools that are driven by AI innovations. The third challenge is more, I would say, sociological in nature. And let's face it, we risk to have backlashes, social backlashes, in respect of the work we are doing, in respect of the work the counter disinformation community is doing. We have had a first signal. The first signal is the position that Elon Musk has taken when he acquired Twitter, now X, and in the name of a free speech absolutism, in fact, has dismantled all the safeguards, or many of the safeguards that they were already being implemented in the last couple of years. And that is in the name of free speech. So we need to remain very much, us as a community, anchored to this guiding principle of freedom of expression as the main value that we need to defend when we talk about disinformation. That is absolutely fundamental. And we need also to overcome other backlashes or backsliding that are present in the society. In your CEDMO trends analysis, I capture some worrying signals of fatigue across the public. You know, people that feel as if they are now well aware of the phenomenon and they are not affected by disinformation anymore. So they are done, the work is done. It's not true. That is a sign of cynicism. It's not a sign of success of the battle against disinformation. It's a sign of cynicism and false superiority that it is intruding into people's mind because the phenomenon is there and is perceived as unbeatable, whereas it should be beaten. And the rest is coming from the US. The far right, it is increasingly attacking the fact-checking community, and that has an impact on the safety also of the work that fact-checkers are doing elsewhere. These risks, I think, should not be overrated. I mean, if you look at the Eurobarometer report from the last June, you see that when citizens in Europe are asked to state what are the most important priorities looking at the digital decade, so from now to 2030, right? What are the most, the first, with 30%, is security, cybersecurity. The second one is about infrastructures, with 27%. But the third, or rather second at a pair with infrastructure, it is safety. And people want to have, at least that they express the will, to have more safety against hate speech, against disinformation, clearly in their replies. So there is still awareness that needs to be harnessed in our societies, but we need to do extremely careful. We need to build, as a community within EDMO, a very solid track record for objective fact-checking, for independence, for objectivity, for professionalism. That I think is very important. And we need to have also the ability to evolve towards more effective approach, from debunking to pre-banking, applying science to develop predictive models to know where the next wave of disinformation may be coming from. And we need also increasingly to focus our work in identification of the sources. We need, as Maria Ressa always says, we need to cut off disinformation upstream by looking at the sources of it. Fourth and last challenge, I think, it is concerning the stability of the family, of the community that we are building together. We need to have sustainability in the future. We need to have diversified source of funding. That is, should not be lost out of sight. We need to diversify our source of funding to ensure sustainability in the long term, because this is a long-term battle. It cannot be gained in a couple of years. And to respond to these challenges in the short term, and I will conclude with these 3 points, I think what we can do, what EDMO can do, and I would say there where EDMO EU in the EDMO Central also said can play a determinant role, it is around 3 main priorities. The first one is really ensuring that collaboration and coordination within the network happens across all areas of activities, from fact-checking to research to media literacy. The examples are there. I mean, if you look at fact-checking, I think we are in a good position. We reacted very quickly when the war in Israel and Gaza appeared to be also an information war. And we created already a basis to link together all the hubs and the work that all the hubs are doing in this field. But we are also preparing for the next challenge, which is the European election 2024. If you look at the research, the AI group, working group, is really going to investigate how that balance between harnessing AI and at the same time protecting users against malicious uses, manipulative use of AI can happen. In media literacy as well, I mean, the work around best practices and standardization, which is led by Sally, I think it is an example on how this coordination and collaboration can actually happen. The second is we need to improve, I think, the way we communicate. We communicate to the media and to the public. We need to have, and this is important to avoid this sociological backlash that I was referring before. We need to have a way that explains to people what we do, why we do it in a way. We need to have probably a joint, as I said already in Dubrovnik, a joint editorial initiative that brings together all the efforts across Europe, across all the hubs, in a single place, in a place where everybody recognizes itself as a producers of content and takes the floor in order to say to our audience, which is not only journalists, maybe also larger than that, what the importance of the work that is done. And third and last, I think we need to understand that our work support the regulators, both national and the EU regulators. We need to have an activity which is well focused and help the monitoring of the code of practice now that the DSA is going to be implemented and will become the overarching legal framework for the code of practice to have teeth. Monitoring of the code, piloting methodologies for access to platform data, and the development testing of structural indicators. Those are three important issues that we need to tackle, I think, together. If we do all that, and I conclude with this, if we do all that in good time, with the good speed, with a pace that is adequate to the fast evolving nature of the events that we want to address, then I think we'll be in a good spot also for the next challenges. As I said before, the next one, it is the European elections in 2024. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And to pick up on those ideas of AI potentially being useful in all the work that we're doing, we have from Microsoft, Robert Ivanschitz, please.
Thank you. It's always hard to go after two eminents in the topic and professors. So I will do my best to show a different perspective, a perspective coming from the private sector and the work we have done in such important topics. So first of all, let me thank you to CEDMO, to EDMO for having us here, to Rector Králíčková and to dear Commissioner Jourová for the opportunity to be standing here in sunny Prague this morning. Without a question, I think that we have seen before that we are here to discuss a very important topic, like is the dilemmas democracy experiencing today in Europe. Technology plays a relevant job helping to address those questions, either as a tool for good or as a powerful weapon. I think we have seen a little hint of both today in previous presentation. Universities are known to be home of tolerance and wisdom, and most of the time for being refugees of hope. So it's an honor for me to be standing here in Prague, in Carolinum, at the very heart of Charles University, as was said, one of the oldest and most prestigious universities, not only in Prague or in the Czech Republic, but in the world. These walls have witnessed quite a lot of standing here for several centuries, including the Czech nation fight for democracy. I would also like to recognize and thank Charles University and CEDMO for the partnership over the years, really for the opportunity to work with you and Microsoft on many different initiatives, including on cybersecurity skilling. Who thought many years ago that this is going to be a priority today when we start partnering with this, on protecting democratic values and fighting disinformation, certainly the topic of today. We started many years ago, and one of our latest joint digital literacy initiative is Verify, which is actually powered by AI and is intended to evaluate the credibility of online articles and the news that we receive today. As Professor Floridi mentioned, the conference, it's not an isolated event. It's happened at a very important moment where policymakers, researchers, tech leaders, including us, Microsoft, gathered last week in the United Kingdom to attend Britain's AI Safety Summit. It was also a week full of announcement. The White House issued an executive order on AI Code of Conduct, which we support and which we had the honor to participate from the very beginning with other important tech companies in the world. And on October 30th, the G7 leaders issued the G7 leader statement on the Hiroshima AI processes. Without a question, there is momentum for AI. There is momentum for AI regulation. And not only momentum, there is a need for AI regulation. And there is a curiosity at every level of the society to better understand the responsible and ethical use of this technology, to assess and identify and hopefully to minimize the potential risk associated with the misuse of AI. We are starting to learn how we can do things better. I hope that by telling all of you a bit more details about what we at Microsoft are doing and we are intending to do about how to preserve and use AI in a responsible and ethical way, you will agree that having these conversations and discussions today, it's not a wishful thinking. It is needed, it is mandatory, it is a must. And I really appreciate the opportunity to do this today with you here in Prague. First, at Microsoft, we believe that it's essential to build this new technology responsible, as I've said before. This is why we first created our responsible AI principles back in 2018, almost 5 years ago, based on fairness, reliability, safety, privacy, security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. I recognize a lot of principles stay with me. Sometimes I even have problems memorizing them, but all of them very important and very needed as the same body. We recognize that nobody will use a technology it doesn't trust, and that principles alone are not enough. To be sure, we were the first to apply our own set of principles. We created as well the Ethics Committee to lead AI research. Not good only with research, then we created the RACE group to enable our engineering teams to implement responsible AI processes in every services and every solution we ran to the market. And finally, we created the Offices of Responsible AI to develop and implement internal policies, which have been key in our conversations with policymakers around the world in order to present our position, to listen to their positions, and to try to come into consensus. We're learning fast, hopefully, and we're applying those learnings to be sure that humans are ahead of technology and not technology ahead of humans. But we didn't stop there. We identified some well-known risks associated with AI, some of them identified today in my previous presentations. For example, the ability of a model to generate content that perpetuates stereotypes of the technology, capacity to fabricate convincing yet factually incorrect information. We believe that understanding this risk is the first step to solving them. Second, as the world becomes increasingly dependent on technology, it presents incredible opportunities and risks to people's fundamental rights and their ability to participate in society, including, but not limiting to, the democratic processes. At Microsoft, we understand we need to support those rights and address the challenges created by technology. We do not live in an island. We do not pretend to live in an island. We need to protect and defend human rights, avoid exacerbating inequities, and close device technology may create where possible. It is not an easy task. We don't pretend to minimize the risk and challenges technology is creating today, but for the same reasons we have made additional investments and commitments to be sure our words are following by our actions. For example, our Democracy Forward initiative works to preserve, protect, and advance the fundamentals of democracy by promoting a healthy information ecosystem, protecting open and secure democratic processes, and advocating for corporate civic responsibility. We also work to support elections worldwide by providing free services and technology to secure critical institutions, protect electoral processes from cyber attacks, and build public trust in voting procedures. Our account card service, it's available, again, for free and at no additional cost to institutions that promote democracy. And we provide security guidance and tools to improve their cyber resilience. By using media literacy tools, Microsoft is trying to help to educate consumers on how to find, consume, and share trusted information. Our goal is to build trust in the information ecosystem by enhancing consumers' information and media literacy skills and by reducing the impact of information operations. We're partnering with NewsGuard to empower our product teams to take additional actions to promote more authoritative information and downgrade less reputable sources. Again, we're learning, we're trying to implement those learnings into actions and to bring the best services and products possible. In addition to technological support, Microsoft has also played a key role in supporting newsrooms and journalists worldwide. Earlier this year, we announced partnership with the US Agency for International Development and Internews to build a media viability accelerator, a global platform to help independent media outlets become more financially sustainable through access to market insights and business solutions, which is open to all. Finally, and maybe the most important part of all of this, is that we can't do this alone. Creating the right public and private partnerships to promote these values is crucial in promoting democracy and democratic values. The already mentioned partnership between Microsoft and the Charles University CEDMO. It's a good example of how we can work together to achieve common goals and create social impact. Commissioner Jourová mentioned about how we need to amplify our principal approach. Microsoft has been a signatory to the European Union's Code of Practice on Disinformation since 2019. And since June 2022, we signed the strengthened version of the code, a self-regulatory set of standards signed by the industry and non-government organizations to fight disinformation. We're mostly not a platform company, but our services Link, Bing, and Microsoft Advertising are part of the Code of Conduct, so it is LinkedIn, maybe the only platform company that we have. These are just some steps taken on what we believe is the right direction, but more certainly will need to be done, and as said before, with curiosity. And we are applying our learnings to improve our services and to detect, hopefully deter, and certainly defend when needed, the malicious use of them, including the malicious use of AI. Thanks again for having us today in this important forum and even more relevant discussions. We wish you luck during the day. We need more of this, no less of this. We don't take invitations for granted and appreciate every opportunity to share our voice with such a distinguished audience. Thanks for your attention. This conference comes at the right time with the right sense of urgency. I trust that the dialogue that we will witness today will translate into a clear set of principles that will reinforce democracy and democratic values as a core human value. Thank you very much.
And so now to finish up this first part of the day, I believe we have Alan Záruba with his presentation on the exhibition in the room outside. So, Alan, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this important conference. I feel really privileged to share with you some ideas from the visual world. I've been a graphic designer myself for more than 25 years now, and during my graduation in London College of Printing, I researched project regarding once forgotten visual language called Isotype. With colleagues designers later on throughout my profession in the next years, we developed and set up a team who examined the possibilities of this kind of visual language for nowadays presenting statistical and economical data. And I would like to share some basics of you. I'm also linked to this analog little exhibition in the foyer, so you can enjoy some of the basics also in the printed form, which I think it's even more important, even we live now in the digital age. Isotype expresses a theory of a visual language that continues to inform much graphic design, education, and practice. It was invented by Austrian logical positivist Otto Neurath, who is on the very left, and his pupil and later on also wife, Marie Reidemeister, the only employee of a museum which he was leading, later on Marie Neurath. Neurath believed that language is the medium of all knowledge, empirical facts are only available to the human mind through symbols. He believed that verbal language and its structure vocabulary failed to be consistent logical model of objects and relations in the physical world. He saw that pictorial signs would provide a universal bridge between symbolic generic language and direct empirical experience. The third person on down left is Gerd Antz, who was a German artist, graphic designer, and left-thinking activist. And he was a very important personality for setting up a little team which basically made history in the history of graphic design and visual language. Hans, as an artist, joined a group that wanted to picture developments in society instead of expressing individual emotions, as it was usual in the era of expressionism in Germany in 1920s. For him, to view lead to woodcuts and linocuts with stylized figures representing social groups and classes, as we can see on the picture. In 1928, he was invited by Neurath, who visited one of his exhibitions while he was presenting his ideas in the famous school of Bauhaus. And he invited Arndt to work in the Gesellschafts- and Wirtschaftsmuseum, which is a museum of social and economical studies in Vienna, and offered him a job. Arndt was fascinated by Neurath's theoretical approach and methodology in the museum. His style lent itself to these objects perfectly. He became Neurath's closest collaborator, friend, and also very important personality to create the new sign language with a high artistic standard and meaningful value. Both of them shared the left and social views on the society paradigm at the time when they were starting. I also wanted to create a visual presentation understandable for everyone, even the illiterate people and uneducated classes, which was very important at that time because we have to take into account that not the middle and lower classes didn't have time to study or educate themselves and even to understand complicated economical data and stats, but they were influencing their life for sure. Social and Economical Museum was founded in 1924 by Neurath. He was appointed by Austrian government to do it. And in the beginning, it was aimed to present some development in the social housing in Vienna, which became very important prospects for creating better living for all members of society. His aim was to document relationships and changes of economic and social values in stats. In case of presenting statistical data, the museum made pioneering work because its scientific and artistic aspiration created understandable picture language by the view of amount. By now, the use statistical diagrams, well, by now and again nowadays, use statistical diagrams by abstract curves, columns, and charts. New methodology invented by the museum is based on a principle that a larger amount is not presented by a larger sign, but a greater amount of signs. The technique which was used in the museum basically perfectly fits even nowadays digital realm. It consisted in 6 periods, in 6 etaps of work. So the team was relatively small. They were like 8 to 10 people. All of them were Austrian. 1/3 of them were Czechs, because the relationship between Czechs and Austrian people were still very high in the artistic circles. So first of all, if you got an idea in brief, it was analyzed by a person who was called transformer. It was the task was to narrow down the problem into a specific brief, which was then possible to visualize. Once a brief was delivered to the table of Gert Ans as the main designer, he created special symbols which were relating to the theme. Then, as created symbols were curved in linocut in order to prepare for printing. When printed, the production took place, and they manually set up the diagrams as it would be nowadays possible to do by digital means. But the methodology is basically the same. And nowadays probably the production would be done by AI, but that's also relevant. And then adjustment went on the boards. The signs which were produced for the museum had a very clear brief to be clear in themselves without the help of words as far as possible. That is living signs. They have to be different from one another, so there will be no doubt of their right name when they are seen again. They have to be simple, that may not be put in lines like letters. That they maybe put lines like letters. So it was basically a visual language was composed not by lettering, but by pictures altogether. The rules of colors were not fixed as the rules of the forms, but there were only 7 colors, specifically because at that time there was a heavy influence by German school of Bauhaus, which taught the simplicity as the best possible design principle, and only the generic basic colors, which is deriving from blue, yellow, and red, and then the mixed, so it's green, brown, and black. This is a picture from the museum, so you can see how elaborative and workable atmosphere was happening there. Also, at that time, we must take into account that there were no profession as a graphic designer or even a designer known or developed yet. These guys in the museum in the late 1920s created something what we can call nowadays one of the first design teams which was involved in order to produce visual communication. And here we got some examples how the work works. What I found and was fascinated while I was studying in London, I went to University of Reading where the largest archive of Isotype is held, and they had hundreds and hundreds of these kind of templates and diagrams which were created in the period of 20 years only and then disappeared. What is very important that the compound signs are creating immediate effect on how the theme stands. So, and the most important thing is not the figure. Let's say this is one car is 200 million cars represented. And so you can see that in United States, the development of car industry from 1914 to 1928 developed at least 3 or 4 times more and in a more dynamic range than in the rest of the world. And that's the point of the diagram. So you can see immediately there is something really strong happening in the United States, unless in the rest of the world it's not so great. The same on the example of unemployment rate in 3 countries, UK, France, and Germany. France is not involved because the government didn't provide the data for unemployment rate in the years between 1920 and 1928, not officially. So they were not put in the diagram. But you can see that the rise of unemployment rate in Germany led to the society crisis, which obviously led into the situations which we, historical situation which we know about. The team was very determined to basically illustrate the complete mankind history. What is important for us now, what is important for them now, and what they wanted to visualize. So they created a compound compendium about all aspects of human life, society, economical, and social affairs. One example which I always show in the lectures and which I really like is, for example, the density of inhabitants in the different towns of world. You can see on the very right up left is New York, and on the very right is Vienna. And you can see the difference. Berlin, for example, the second row left. So 6 people or 6 more people, 3 more people were living in the same flat like in New York or in Chicago, which was even better, which is the only one person living in the whole building. So these kind of visualizations created tremendous impact on understandability and clearness of social and economical data within society, because you don't have to read in order to understand the pictures. This is an example of the variability and tremendous design quality which Gert Arndt and his team created over the scope of 5 or 6 years when the museum existed. And it basically illuminates all the aspects of human life within the economical and social terms. Then the whole team, as the crisis in Germany and Austria obviously raised up, and Otto Neurath and his team were first on the list in order to be sent to the concentration camp. In 1938, they left Austria for Soviet Union, which invited them to provide, I know, 5 minutes, okay? Which invited them to provide some facts, and they created some very important publications in Holland when they left to, then UK, they collaborated with United States, with Compton Encyclopedia, and they created the whole system, very interesting literature about what's happening in human life. And you can see some of the examples in the little exhibition in the foyer. I, for example, really like, the 2 circles. One is showing the life before Industrial Revolution, where people didn't have any time to spare for themselves, and they have to work, then they have a little time to eat, and then went to bed, because they have to rest for the next day when they have to work again. But Industrial Revolution helped people and society to equal their time, and to start, they could be able to plan their time. So more time for themselves. I wonder how it would be nowadays when we get AI on the doorstep, and what would we do with our time? So these visualizations are very important to understand the concept of life and the paradigm of society which we lived and which we are going to live again. And as a matter of the fact, there was no carry on after death of Otto Neurath in 1945. Marie Neurath carried on the torch of the visual project for another 20 years. Then when she died in 1970s, no more follow-up. The only development which arrived from the system were symbols for signage. Probably you know these kind of signage, DOT symbol signs, which are in every airport you can fly from, or harbor or railway station, and Olympic signs. They were also deriving from this. And they were doing also some work with UNESCO, for example, in United Nations. For example, doing the pamphlets for illiterate people in Nigeria, how to vote, how to properly organize themselves in order to vote correct way. And this I will switch off. When we set up a set of designers, a group of designers from Austria, UK, Germany, myself, and United States. We created a project called "Do We Understand the World?" ? Do we really understand the world? That's what is the project trying to tell some answers. And we did some publications. And we still work occasionally on some case studies. When I got the opportunity from CEDMO, from Václav and Nick, to present and to dive again in the archive, which I left 20 years ago, I was fascinated how actual is nowadays. And give you some examples. This is what we did, I think, 10 years ago. Strabag, the famous building company from Austria, asked us to represent the stuff by the symbols of Isotype to produce a kind of more credible and clear way who is who. And I tried to do something. I got some graph from CEDMO. So you can see the graph from one of the researchers, satisfaction with democracy and international comparison. And this is how it looks like in the traditional way. And this is how it would like in the way of Isotype, when you can see immediately one person is 1%, and you can see immediately that the affinity of satisfaction with democracy in Czech Republic is the highest range. And you can see immediately the comparison with Slovakia. It's almost less, half less. On the other side, the bottom side clearly signs that Slovak democracy and Slovak states got a really problem. I don't want to interfere with anyone from Slovakia. I have lots of friends there, but this shows some problem, and that's the point of Isotype. And I hope we are now aiming and using this methodology in order to proceed in a digital way for presentation, statistical and economical data, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Alan. As I said, these sorts of systems will be familiar to many of us in the news media. Some of them also reminded me of emojis, actually, so not really much new in graphic development. They're going back to where they were in Vienna in the 1920s. It was really, really fascinating. So now we'll have a short coffee break, and we will still aim for 11:20 for maybe 5 minutes longer, so 11:25 for the next panel, because we have run over slightly, and that will be the impact of recent elections on democracy prospects in Central Europe, and it will be Nick Hinek from CEDMO who is leading that. Plenty to discuss there, I'm sure. So we'll see you back here at 11:25. Thank you.